Welcome. In this video, I want to discuss the meaning of the terms synchronous and asynchronous, specifically with reference to teaching of high school students remotely, as so many of us have been doing in 2020 for the first time. So for many of you, it's been a first time teaching in this way. And what that means for me is it's been a grand opportunity for action research to carry out remote learning, to employ certain strategies, to reflect on them as you go about it, to change them as you go along, to reflect again, and to continue refining and improving. For this is the nature of action research. So I certainly do hope that many of you, like me, have been carrying out your own reflections and refinements and making changes to the work that you do, and that you've been seeing a lot of success, and that you certainly have a lot to share. And I certainly want to invite you to share that with me here on the chat below this video on YouTube. I want to refer today to the work of Dr. Tony Bates, who is very much an authority in online teaching. And this diagram was created by him to help explain 4 terms that relate to online teaching. And by discussing these 4 terms, I think it helps us to organize in our minds what kind of teaching we have. And in doing that, there would be some introspection and some reflection, which hopefully could lead to an improvement in our practice. So everything that I've changed from Dr. Bates' diagram has been put in red, and of course his diagram is in black. And I do have the right to share this non-commercially, and of course my YouTube channel is for no profit. So moving into the diagram, the terms asynchronous and synchronous are 2 words that have been used a lot by educators in 2020. But what do you understand when you say, my class is synchronous today? For many of us, I think it means that you get on some platform like Zoom for most people, or for me it's Google Meet, and the students may appear on camera, or you have them with voice and text, and you engage with them for the duration of your school allocated time during the day. That is very much synchronous. And of course, parents and administrators likely would have been saying, please don't expect the students to stay online listening to you for 90 minutes. But if you choose to do that, if you choose to lecture for 90 minutes, or if you choose to go synchronously, to have your 15 or 20 kids sitting out there on their cameras, listening to you speak, and share your screen for 75 minutes, 45 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever it is, then you are very much synchronous. But you are not communicative, according to Bates. You are very much broadcast and synchronous. So, in a sense, you're no different from a television series in the 1970s and 80s, before the age of the internet, when everyone would tune in at a certain time to watch their favorite program. And if you missed it, it's gone. So teachers who may be operating in that way, you can describe yourself as broadcast and synchronous. But of course, what many of us might take the opportunity to do is to record, whether it's a YouTube live stream or a Zoom lecture or something like that, to record it and to place it online. And once we do that, of course, we take our synchronous broadcast and we make it into an asynchronous broadcast. But it remains as broadcast because there's no interactivity going on. There are no questions being asked. There's no response coming from students. So it's very much an asynchronous broadcast. And according to Bates, students do tend to favor asynchronous broadcasts versus synchronous broadcasts. But he does point out that the element of surprise with the synchronous broadcast is something that engages people in a unique way. And he does use the example of people wanting to watch a sporting event live. But in my perspective, I don't think that applies to a teacher presenting a lecture. Most students, and the research supports this, would prefer to have access, if it's a lecture for 45 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it is, to have access to that lecture. And what they tend to do a lot is to just forward to various places where they get the essential information in that lecture. It's for us as educators to reflect on whether we are synchronous and broadcast, whether we are asynchronous and broadcast, and is that the best way for us to be delivering our content? In my opinion, we should look at the bottom of this diagram to find the most engaging techniques for high school students and for adults. And the communicative way is where the student and the teacher engages in an interactive discourse. Something is asked by the teacher, presented by the teacher, and students respond in real time. If they're responding in real time, it means that if you are lecturing and you pause after 1 minute of lecture and you say, share the answer to this question on your Google Jamboard or your Google Chat or your Google Hangout or on the Google Meet chat or in Google Classroom or wherever, then you are engaging in communicative practice, interaction, but you're doing so in real time. And for me, this is the favored method, especially for high school students, because they do lack that discipline and motivation to set things up on their own and decide when they're going to go engage in activities. And calling them together as a group, having that social setting is so important for the kids in this remote learning. And in my opinion, I'm very much in favor of this quadrant here, the synchronous communicative. But there is also an opportunity to go asynchronous and communicative, which is how a lot of adult learning online has happened over the last 25, 30 years since the advent of the internet. Materials are shared online, adults work through it, they engage with each other in online discussion forums with the lecturer, the teacher, the professor, usually on wikis, and you get feedback. You never hear your teacher's voice, you never hear another student's voice, but you're constantly back and forth communicating. And this particular mode of learning was quite popular and still is quite popular among the working adult, someone who's highly motivated and driven, and they know what goal and objective they have for themselves. So they know that they have to get online and get XYZ done and to participate in this and to participate in that. And even for the mature learner, this approach does have some challenges. And going this way brings that human element, that sense of community, and it also maintains active participation on the part of the learner. But to go with this alone would not be sufficient to get substantial learning. Students still need to complete assignments on their own and submit them. So a combination of having this synchronous communicative every day and then moving into some kind of asynchronous and communicative activity would also supplement the synchronous communicative activity. And if you think about it, your traditional homework assignment is very much an asynchronous communicative activity where the students are given an assignment at the end of their class in school face-to-face. They go home and they complete it and they come back to class and the teacher discusses it with them. So very much asynchronous and communicative because that discussion follows up. That's different from if the teacher simply shares a website and says, go read this for your own interest and do whatever you like with it. That, of course, is an asynchronous broadcast approach where the student reads a book, watches a YouTube lecture, does something on their own. So with that in mind, I would like you to reflect on what your teaching has looked like in 2020. Where do you fit in? And to have a conversation among your group. Where does the majority of your teaching fit in with this diagram from Bates? Do you touch on all four of them or do you touch on just two?